Hello my friends, welcome back to another episode of our ProRevenge, where you guys come for your daily dose of satisfaction. Guys, I have got 6 awesome revenge stories in this one. The first story is how 2 thieves thought they got away with a dine and dash. The second story is how 1 phone call ends a Shady towing company. And the third story is a job offer that cost the company almost $500,000. I hope you stay for the stories today and subscribe for future videos. Let us get into it. This story is titled, My Manager is Hardcore About Dining and Dashing. So, the other day my strict manager was in a particularly good mood and told us this story, and I thought it belonged here. A week or 2 ago it was dinner time on a Friday, so like plenty of other restaurants, we were really busy with a long wait. A former employee from a different location comes in to apply for a job. Because of how busy we are, the manager asked the cashier for basic information and her resume so he can look her up in the system. He finds out that she cannot be rehired per company policy, so he has the cashier tell her that the restaurant is too busy for a manager to conduct an interview. Despite not getting an interview, the girl and her friend decide to eat dinner and not pay. My manager looks over the tapes and sees the girl that is applying for the job walk around through the store section of our restaurant, go to the bathroom, and leave. A few minutes later, her friend does the exact same thing. Luckily, he has all of her personal information on the resume that she left behind, as well as her license plate from the parking lot cameras. On to my manager's revenge. My manager decides to call her back up and apologizes for being so busy and asks if she could come back for an interview with him. She took the bait. She wants to know when, so my boss lies and says that he is leaving on vacation for a few weeks the next day, and it would be best if she came back in as soon as possible. An hour later, he sees her car pull into the parking lot and calls the police. He sits down with her and conducts an interview like any other. He then excuses himself to get some paperwork and comes back with the receipts and confronts her about not paying. She immediately starts freaking out, saying her friend told her that she would pay for her meal. She offered to pay for her meal but says that she will not pay for her friend's. My manager tells her that she will pay for both, or he will bring in the police that he has already called. She pays for both meals and leaves a nice tip. Then she says to my manager, "Wait, you did not just bring me in here to have me pay, did you?" My manager tells her, of course not, but that she should come in tomorrow and ask for Teresa, our general manager, so she can interview her. Sure enough, she comes in the next day and asks for the GM. Teresa tells her that not only will she never work at one of the restaurants again, but she is no longer welcome back at our location. A lot to go through for a dine and dash, but still amusing if you ask me. What a way to start a potential job, by stealing from the place you want to be employed at. Silly girl, you are supposed to steal after you get hired. Always steal after. I am kidding, I am not. I am not condoning theft at a workplace. Please do not steal from your workplace. It is just a joke. I want to make that very clear. But it is nice to hear that justice was served on a dine and dash, though a lot of them just get away scot-free. The next story is titled, Killed a Tow Company with One Simple Phone Call. Several years back, I went to work for a towing company. It is about all I know how to do other than paint cars, which is drastically affecting my health. The pay was pretty decent, but we had to share trucks, and the boss felt that he knew where we needed to sit in order to get the best calls. This is important for later. Several months in, I realized that I was not making the type of money that I should be making. So I took the opportunity while I was sitting in a parking lot one evening to start researching the laws pertaining to employees in similar positions. He was kind of a jerk, and the trucks had transponders so he could see if we had them idling with the AC on during hot days or idling with the heat on during cold ones. He was always calling, complaining about something if the wheels were not turning. During my research, I discovered that if he was requiring us to sit in a certain parking lot, streets, or any location of his choosing, that we were entitled to be paid an hourly wage, not just our commission. The technical term was engaged to wait. However, if he allowed us to freely roam about while we waited for calls, we were not entitled to hourly wages and therefore we were considered waiting to be engaged. I never mentioned this to him, but I did start taking note of my time. Another month or so goes by, and he decided to start coming down on me for tiny little things that ordinarily would not even matter, such as forgetting a pop can in the cup holder. He actually had a screaming fit about that. At this point, I was tired of working there and had already found another job, so I decided it was time to put my plan into motion. I called him up, told him that we needed to have a conversation about my final wages and that we could meet at his convenience. Upon entering the office, I laid out my argument, explained the state law, and told him that I expected to be paid for the hours that I was on the clock but not freely allowed to roam looking for work. He told me that I would no way in heck get paid for that time as it was agreed upon my employment. I did not bother to argue as I had already had my next step planned, so I took my final check and I left. The following Monday, I made a phone call to the State Labor Board where I laid out my case to them. Needless to say, they were very interested in what was going on, and in the end, they came to review his employment records and speak to the drivers still working. When he got the bill of what he had to pay us all, it was too much for him to afford. So he sold the trucks, his boat, and pretty much everything, and went out of business. I never got the money owed to me in full, only a fraction, but the satisfaction of knowing the law just a little bit better than he did and watching it all burn was pure bliss. So, I've noticed that there is a lot of towing company revenge stories on the subreddit. I am starting to wonder if all towing companies are owned and managed by shady people. The next story is titled, "Mess Me Over the Day I Am Supposed to Start a Job? Enjoy Your Worst Sales Year in Decades." Background: a few years ago, I worked in the wine industry, and I traveled to Australia to try to broaden my experience of the industry as well as of life and to try out living abroad for a while. I also knew the pay there was vastly higher than it was in my hometown at the time in the UK. I had quite a bit of experience, had a decent cover letter and resume, great qualifications in the industry, and I was young and eager. At the time, I had a 1-year work visa, but this could have been extended to 2 years or longer depending on the employer. I applied for loads of jobs. I was stoked to have an interview with one of my favorite wineries in the region for a sales rep job. I drove to the winery, met with the hiring manager, and had the interview of my life. I nailed it. To this day, I have never had a better interview. The winery manager got along great, and at the end of the interview, the hiring manager told me that I was a shoo-in, that they would be in touch with me shortly to let me know if I got the job, followed by a very reassuring wink and nod. The very next day, I got a phone call saying that they would be delighted to have me as their regional sales rep, and we discussed a start date. This winery was several hours out of the city, so I had to move quite a distance, rent an apartment, buy a car, and so on. This cost me the vast majority of the savings that I had accumulated back home before the move. A few days before the starting date, I gave them a call to let them know that I moved in, and that I am looking forward to starting and to ask if they would not mind if I came along a few days before just to get a better lay of the land, etc. They said the owners were not around, so do not bother coming in, but call again tomorrow. I did, and again the owners were not around. Again, I was due to start on Monday, so I figured, oh well, I guess I will meet them then. I showed up bright and early, 20 minutes early, on the first day, ready to meet the crew and get stuck in. I walked around until I found someone, as the cellar door in the main areas were not open yet. They told me to hang around until someone showed up. Eventually, the general manager appears, and when I say I am supposed to be meeting with him, his eyes widen. He goes a little whiter, and then after some hemming and hawing, he lets me know that they are not ready today and need a few more days to sort things out, but to call back in the afternoon to find out when I am supposed to start. I call back, and it goes to voicemail. I leave a voicemail saying, "Hey, it is no worries, but let me know which day of the week you want me to start." I call the hiring manager I had spoken to before, and that goes to voicemail, and I do the same. 2 more days pass, and I am starting to get really irritated. I want to start work. I called the hiring manager again, who picks up. I am as civil as I can be, but I do ask why I have not been called back. She lets me know that the owners have changed their minds and they do not want to hire me anymore. She admitted that this was a pretty low thing to do and she had been trying to convince them to take me, but they have had issues with the fact that I am a temporary worker and would not be there for more than 2 years. I let her know that there were options for extending my ability to stay in the country, etc., and she said she knew, but they were adamant. I was pretty ticked off at this point, so I decided to call them directly. Their number was easy to find, so I called them and left a voicemail asking them to call me back. And another voicemail a day later, all the time remaining as polite as I could. Eventually, I called them from Skype with no number, and they actually picked up. I asked why they no longer wished to hire me and tried to explain that I could apply for an extension on my work visa. Then came the line the owner said, "We just do not want a Pommy working for us. Just plain and simple, mate." I almost lost my temper. This had nothing to do with the sponsorship thing, they just do not like Brits. I terminate my lease, cancel my internet, and drive back up the coast, costing about 2,000 Australian dollars. On to the revenge. Ticked off at this point but desperate for money, I stay at a hostel and begin job searching again. This time, there is a pretty great job as a regional manager and buyer for a decently sized chain of liquor stores. This is a little beyond my previous experience, but I go for it. I get the job, and suddenly I am responsible for 7 stores and the purchases they make, 7 big stores that buy a lot of wine. When the store managers make their weekly orders, it was done through an online system where the various products and quantities were put in. There was a short window between the order being submitted and the order actually going through to be fulfilled. I simply canceled each and every store's orders of the wines from that specific winery. I did that every single week until I left. Each store, before I came along, was ordering between 15 and 30 cases of this producer's wine a week, averaging about $6,000 per store in sales. When the store manager saw that their stocks were dwindling or gone and asked me about it, I simply said that they changed their pricing and we cannot afford to sell it right now. And every time their sales rep, who did not know me, called and asked what the problem was, I just told them that their product was not moving and we do not need any stock right now. The thing was, their wine always sold very well. I was not there long. I hated that job, the hours and the stress of taking care of 7 freaking stores, but the revenge was sweet. After 4 months I packed it in, and I reckon their attitude cost them about $400,000 in sales. I could have made that for them if they hired me. What a horrible thing to happen, OP, and I am glad they got revenge in the end. $400,000 in sales is quite a bit. The next story is titled, Parking in Our Disabled Spot and Joyfully Selling Your Home. Sorry for making this long, but the context is pretty important. My little sister, who's the sweetest girl in the world, is 12 years old but can't walk or communicate. Her mental age is around 6 months. She obviously can't attend a regular school, but since we live in a big city, there's a wonderful school for kids like her. Even though we don't own a car since we don't need one, we got the city to put up signs in front of our house, designating a 4-meter parking spot for wheelchair pickup and drop-off for her school bus. The signs went up perhaps 2 years ago, and after the first week, we never really had any issues since most of our neighbors are wonderful and totally understanding of the designated spot. For some context, we live in a poor community. We're not struggling to get by any means, but we're not Bill Gates either. Sadly, the neighborhood gets a lot of self-centered people with their Mercedes-Benz or Audis honking at the bus while my sister gets loaded onto the school bus. This really angers us, as well as the other sensible people who witness it. Naively, we thought this would be the extent of the unpleasant interactions. In September, we woke up on a Monday morning to find a shiny BMW parked in our disabled spot. It wasn't just partially in it, it was positioned perfectly to take up the entire spot. To make things worse, there were about a dozen open spots on the block. And it's not like they were occupied that morning since we wake up at 6 a.m. We were baffled. I'd seen this car many times since last July, and it was definitely the same car since there weren't many burgundy sports cars in the neighborhood. It was usually parked about 20 meters south on the street, so we knew it belonged to a neighbor a few doors down. We did all the basics in this type of situation. We took a picture, took down the license plate, and called the police to report it. The cops came by within the hour and wrote a big fat ticket. I believe it was for $700, but don't quote me on it. Anyway, it was a significant amount. Around noon, a smug, angry guy came knocking on my door. It was obvious that it was the owner of the car, so I made a quick decision to record the conversation or screaming match on my phone. I opened the door, and before I could say a thing, this jerk lays into me. He's in his mid-40s. He accuses me of all things, ranging from putting up those signs that morning to frame him, to being racist, to us not liking him because he's rich. He goes on to say that disabled parking spots shouldn't even be a thing, that they're always empty anyway, and he also said that we should pay for his undeserved ticket, that it isn't even an inconvenience since the spot right next to us was free, and my sister could have got on the bus from there, blah blah blah. Once he finished, I said, "Okay," and shut the door in his furious face. He rang the doorbell another 5 times before storming off. To my satisfaction, the recording caught everything fairly clearly. In the evening, I told my parents what happened and gave my dad a copy of the recording. We have a pretty tight-knit community for the most part, and there's a neighborhood Facebook group with around 3,000 members. My dad decided to post a summary of what happened, along with a recording and a picture of the car in our handicap spot on the page. There was a media uproar with people saying that they would fight back or whatever, and we were humbled by the feeling that our community was standing up for us, but we didn't think anything would come of it. The next day, I left the house to go to school and walked by the guy's car, which was back in his normal spot, and noticed that the front right tire was deflated. Upon closer inspection, it was slashed. As I said, our community's tight-knit, but I can't say I expected anything like this to happen. The guy must have seen the Facebook post because he didn't come back to our house to complain or accuse us of anything. The following weeks were sweet. Whenever I saw him in public, people would go up to him and remind him that he was a horrible human being. In November, his house had a for sale sign in the window. The housing market had also gone down by a bit. I'm always kind of curious about how much houses similar to ours are selling for, so once I saw the for sale sign, I rushed home to check the house listings, and lo and behold, he was selling for $90,000 less than what it was going for last July. He really wanted to get out of our neighborhood. While his crime wasn't nearly worth $90,000, I must say that I don't feel bad. Worst case scenario, he sells that obnoxious car of his, which would easily cover the lost money. Let's just say we haven't had a single car parked in my sister's spot since. Until this story, I had no idea that you could have a dedicated parking spot in front of your house designated as a handicapped spot. It's unfortunate that the guy basically ruined his reputation in the community and had to move away, but a lot of people with their heads screwed on would have had the common sense to say, hey, this family dedicated the spot as handicapped for a reason, let's not park in it. This story is titled, Ma'am, you can't be parking in the loading zone. So, I ended up ruining someone's day a while back, all over a little sign that reads, no parking, loading zone, between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., Monday to Friday. I was delivering to a large mixed retail strip mall in a Toronto suburb. The place doesn't have a rear delivery area, so by design, there's a blocked-off area on the side of the complex to allow delivery vehicles, garbage trucks, and couriers access to unload during the day. The place also has a medical center next door. That medical center charges for parking, whereas the strip mall doesn't. Being so enterprising, cheap people will park and walk over, even though a multitude of signs prohibiting the practice are plastered all over the lot. So, the complication is that the loading area is close to the medical arts building and has parking lines laid down but has a sign that says, no parking, loading zone, between 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Friday. Dozens of trucks use this lot daily for their needs. However, it's not often that a full-size semi, like me, has to use it. I need every inch of that lot to position properly so I can get the freight off and on my merry way. Often I'll arrive, and there's a single car occupying a space. They're a bother but can be moved around easily. On this morning I'm rolling into the lot when a full-sized Escalade pulls in behind me and parks right beside the loading ramp on one spot that usually ruins my approach. There are like 50 spots in the loading zone to choose from and like 500 spots in the actual parking lot. I roll down my window and motion that I need to use the ramp. Now most self-aware, self-conscious people would get the hint. Nope. Miss Self-Important decided that since she's parked, y'all can deal with it. She unloads her kids into the stroller and obviously ignores me as I'm protesting her parking choice. My parting shot was, great example you're setting for your kids, lady, and it earned me some shade and a casual obscured middle finger salute. Fine then, I have nothing but time on my hands. I called the towing number on the sign and they said they were less than an hour out. Then I called my store contact, who spotted my reversing, and he also called the towing company to complain. With an extra pair of eyes, I placed my truck inches from her back bumper, snapped a couple of cell pics for liability coverage, and started unloading. Then karma came calling, self-addressed to Mrs. Self-Important. A compactor garbage truck came through to empty out the mall bins, a little over to the right of Mrs. Self-Important's parking spot. After some eye rolls from the garbage truck driver, the empty bin miraculously managed to end up blocking her only path of escape after my tight squeeze parking. Oh crap, she's hemmed in now. So I got a crew of guys unloading me, and we're all anxious, knowing that it's about to go down. Finally, the fruits of our labor ripen. The tow truck arrives, looks at the situation we've created, and is nothing but laughs. He's snapping pictures of the mess, dollies the wheels of the Escalade, and slides it perfectly out onto his flatbed. 10 minutes, and he's gone. Security arrived during the tow and remained, and sure enough, 90 minutes after leaving, Mrs. Self-Important is returning from the medical center, her kids in tow. She goes from zero to righteous nuclear indignation in an instant, and demands to know where her car is. One of the guys unloading me hollers, "Oh, the one blocking the loading ramp? It's towed." Her phone is out in an instant, videoing us, claiming harassment, theft, damages, and she's on 911 in a flash, accusing us of stealing her car. Security quickly intervenes and, in the most professionally condescending tone possible, explains the signs, the tow-away loading zone, and the contact for the company that towed it. The region's finest in blue show up and take over. I give a quick statement, and the officers basically say it's a civil matter. She ends up relenting, defeated, and a taxi is called. I wrap up unloading my truck under her murderous stare. So I'm rolling out on my way, and I get a text from the dispatcher saying, "So, you're stealing people's cars now? I don't know how some people think they're above the law. If there's a sign that says, 'No parking between this time and this time,' don't park there, and don't be surprised when you come out to see your vehicle gone." This story is titled, "Yes, I understand it's a public street. Now let's learn the difference between legality and civility." Okay, this happened in the summer of 2016 when my wife and I moved into our new home on a tree-lined brick street. Nice neighborhood, but nothing fancy. We met the neighbors, my wife made cookies, and they invited us to their pool parties. We swapped food, stuff, and recipes. It was all Ozzie and Harriet until I put up a fence around our backyard for security, as anyone could come in off the back alley right up to our porch and our back door. Plus, I wanted to be able to let our two short-haired dogs out to play without having to tie them up or supervise them. Well, our neighbors didn't like that, and who can say why? I never did find out why a fence would bother them so much. 3 things changed. 1, they no longer invited us to their pool parties. 2, we no longer traded cookies and pies. And lastly, they began parking in front of our house out of spite. Now, it's a public street, and you can do as you will, but my 2 spaces were constricted by a telephone pole that had guide wires coming down from it, meaning you'd have to be careful getting in and out of your car lest you scratch the paint or, worse, clothesline yourself with the metal cables. So, we had one good spot that lined up our car door with a sidewalk perfectly, and that became their default parking space despite the fact that they had their spaces and a 2-car garage off in the alley in the back. They also started an illicit piano lessons business and apparently decided to keep their front spots open for their customers. I work odd hours, and it always seemed that there were a line of cars in front of both houses, so I'd end up having to park frustratingly far away. With winter coming, trudging through slush-carrying groceries had zero appeal. So, I watched and waited until one fine fall day, with the leaves changing from green to brilliant gold and a morning chill that promised winter soon to come, it happened. Their 3 to 5 cars were gone, and nobody was giving piano lessons. I struck. I raced to my dad's and hitched his houseboat to his old farm truck and towed the combo back home, parking 80 feet of gloriously tacky redneck hardware directly in front of their house, while my vehicle took up our prime spot and most of the telephone pole space as well. I left the combo there for almost 2 weeks, right in front of their swing on the porch that they like to sit on in the evenings. Pressure from my wife and the impending monthly street sweeping finally led me to remove the blockade. They've not parked in front of our house since, nor have we spoken more than 5 words in 2 years, and that's fine by us. The woman can't bake anyway. As a reader dropping a comment on these stories, I'm loving the mix of clever revenge, workplace drama, and entitled people getting their comeuppance. These tales are equal parts infuriating and satisfying, with some real gems of justice. Here's my take on each, written like I'm chiming in on a forum. My manager is hardcore about dining and dashing. Oh man, this manager is a legend. Tricking the dine and dash job applicant into coming back for an interview just to confront her? Absolute genius. I'm cackling at how she thought she could scam a free meal while applying for a job at the same place. The nerve. Making her pay for both meals and then banning her from the restaurant is peak justice. The fake GM name drop was the cherry on top. Bet she was mortified when Teresa shut her down. Also, love the commenter's steal after you're hired joke. Don't worry, we know you're kidding. Dine and dashers deserve every bit of this karma. Killed a tow company with one simple phone call? This one's a masterclass in quiet revenge. Op doing their homework on engaged-to-wait laws and dropping that bomb on the shady boss is so satisfying. The guy sounds like a total jerk, screaming over a pop can. Really? Shutting down his entire business by reporting him to the labor board is next-level petty, and I'm here for it. Sucks that OP didn't get all their money, but watching the boss sell his trucks and his boat, pure bliss. Also, the commenter's right. Why do so many towing companies seem so sketchy? Sounds like this industry needs a cleanup. Mess me over the day I am supposed to start a job? Enjoy your worst sales year in decades. Ouch, this one stings. Getting ghosted after moving across Australia for a job because the owners didn't want a pommy? That's straight up discriminatory and awful. OP's revenge, though, canceling $400,000 in wine orders as a regional manager? That's cold and brilliant. I love how they played it off like the wine wasn't moving while tanking the winery's sales. The fact that the winery could have had OP's skills but lost out due to their own prejudice is poetic justice. Sorry you had to deal with that, OP, but you got them good. Anyone else got stories of employers pulling a bait-and-switch like this? Parking in our disabled spot and joyfully selling your home. This guy parking his BMW in a disabled spot for a kid with severe disabilities is just vile. The audacity to scream about undeserved tickets and claim disabled spots shouldn't exist? Disgusting. Posting the recording to the neighborhood Facebook group was a smart move. Nothing like community shaming to set things right. The slashed tire and $90,000 hit on his house sale feel like sweet, sweet karma. I'm with the commenter. It's awesome that the city set up a designated spot for OP's sister, but it's wild that someone would be so selfish. Bet he thinks twice before parking in a disabled spot again. Great job standing up for your sister, OP. Ma'am, you can't be parking in the loading zone. Ha ha. Mrs. Self-Important getting her Escalade towed is the kind of instant karma I live for. Parking in a loading zone with a zillion other spots available and flipping off the driver? She had it coming. The garbage truck blocking her in and the tow truck driver laughing at the chaos is pure gold. Her meltdown on 911 about stolen cars is peak entitlement. Lady, read the signs. The security guard's condescending explanation was the icing on the cake. Love how OP and the crew just kept unloading while she raged. Don't park in loading zones, folks. It's not worth the tow. Yes, I understand it's a public street. Now let's learn the difference between legality and civility. The houseboat and farm truck combo parked for 2 weeks in front of the neighbor's house? Iconic. Those neighbors turning petty over a backyard fence and hogging OP's parking spot out of spite deserved every bit of this redneck revenge. The fact that they stopped inviting OP to pool parties and trading cookies over a fence is so childish. Parking 80 feet of tacky hardware to reclaim the spot is next-level commitment. I'm impressed. Also, the woman can't bake anyway had me laughing. Gotta agree with the commenter, civility matters, even if it's technically a public street. Anyone else dealt with neighbors this petty? And that is it for this episode of our ProRevenge. If you are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I upload videos almost every day. See you guys in the next one.